The danger of only doing one thing. It sounds so cool, it sounds so simple. You'd pick one thing and then you do it until you are good enough. But here I think is the problem. I tried to do this many times. I tried to do this one thing many times. But whatever it currently is you are trying to do, your life is not one thing. You are an organism that has different needs. Now, depending on how you divide your life, you could divide it into health, for example. You could divide it into work. Now, of course, if you divide your life, what usually is the one thing people talk about is not your health or your social relationships, but it is your work. So the one thing you do is your work. Now, of course, you can do one thing, that is your work then. You can do one job and you try to do this one job very well. But as soon as you now let yourself only do this one thing, of course, the other parts of your life suffer. So therefore, if life has several categories, and just depending on how you spend your time, you could argue this is the case. Because it's not only social, it's not only work, it's not only health, but maybe it's also your personal finances, for example. Maybe it is also additional learning, you could say. So now, let's just assume you have these 4 buckets. And finance is also kind of your work. But what if you work a job, then finance is not really your work. Therefore, maybe you would also need a finance category. Of course, you could say, I have the private stuff, which is basically my health, my social, which is also studying and learning, and so on and so forth. And then there is work. So this would be an umbrella term, basically. You would have work and you would have your private life. Now, each of these categories has a level. A level is a very static thing. So this means, in terms of health, if we would gamify health, it seems that currently the biological age seems to be a good marker, a good proxy for how healthy you are. So therefore you could say, I'm as healthy as my chronological age is. So therefore I have this level of health, which maybe correlates to a certain difference in age from chronological to biological. But this is not only static, it's dynamic. Life is dynamic because we have this thing called time. So as time progresses, ideally, your health doesn't go down entirely. So if your health is here, as time progresses, you don't want to have it here, which is the case anyway in terms of health. Now, health, additionally, is also a knockout criteria. If you don't have health, all the others are basically irrelevant. If you don't have finances, and if you have trouble with finances, all the others seem to be at least irrelevant. Therefore, it would make sense to include every single area of your life that could act as a knockout criteria for actually doing the tasks that are required by the others. If you maybe don't have a social life, this might have negative side effects, which could be a higher likelihood to become depressive and so on and so forth. So, as soon as you neglect one of these single things, as soon as you not only keep these things maybe static on a good level, but of course you also need to develop, because things always can happen that can make this level regress. Just think of mortality and health. So therefore, you should not only have basically a constant level, but you over time, the second derivative basically, should also increase this level of health, or at least increase your effort, because maybe you cannot control the result, but at least you can kind of control your input. So now, if you do one thing and you concentrate only on work and you let your social relationships stagnate maybe on a constant level, then you're giving up the progress. If you maybe had this progress before, then stagnating now at a constant level means this basically drops to 0. What if maybe studying, for example, helps you? What if you still study And therefore, you're able to increase the efficiency of work, with work now defined as the function that you work, you exchange your time for money in some way or another. So maybe you increase basically your worth by getting a degree by 10%. Then your work becomes much more efficient and you maybe in total have more time. So if you focus only on one thing and you just work, you work 10, 12 hours a day, and this is something I experienced myself often with myself. When I am really into work, I just want to work, and then I just don't want to stop. Until I do want to stop, because my body obviously has some needs. So maybe after staying up 30 hours, my body then wants to sleep. And now the cost of you staying up 30 hours is not only the cost that is directly linked to the 30 hours. It's not only the cost that you have that is lost if this is your day and you should sleep here maybe, and you lose this slot, then this does not only have the direct consequences of you losing that slot, but now you also, so it's not only exchanging the time of sleeping with the time of working the next day, but there are also second and third order consequences to this, which are that you eroded just your sleeping habit once more. You eroded all the different mechanisms in your body that are actually maybe aligned with your sleeping schedule. As soon as you do this even one time, then this has negative side effects. Not only on your health, but then also in the mid and long term on your ability to work. Because maybe the next day you would have discovered something. You would have discovered something new, but only if you had the mental space that is required. So maybe your mental space would be at 80%, let's say. And now, since it would be at 80%, so 80% of your performance would basically be enough to get through the next day. But now if you are only at maybe 30% of this performance, then these additional 20% you would have gained, you would have had left, are now just not here anymore. Because with your 30% of performance, you're just barely able to go through the day without damaging basically anything. So these 20% just could have been the one thing you learned that then at the next and the next and the next and the next day eventually compounded into something new. Compounded maybe into finally getting your degree and then increasing your work efficiency by 10% because you get now 10% more, therefore you would have to work a little bit less. So doing only one thing sounds so nice, but I think it's not only one thing. It's always trying to keep all the different goals aligned. It's always trying to optimize all of the different aspects of your life simultaneously. Because if you only focus on one thing, then the optimization function is rigged because it doesn't include all the different variables that in general you need in the optimization function that is your life.